Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Historical Gamer once again, and today I'm going to be playing a different game. It's a new strategy game that just came out a couple of days ago, and it's called This is the Police. The game is a little bit different than anything I've played recently, and certainly very different than anything I've played on my channel so far. It's a game which is more story driven than anything, although I would still consider it a strategy game. There are both elements of real time strategy as well as turn based strategy that mix into the game. In the game, your character is a 60-year-old police chief of a city called Freiburg, and you are on your way out. So you've been sort of the good cop fighting the good fight for your entire career, more or less. It does admit that you've made a few compromises here and there, but in general, you're a good police officer whose wife has left you and is missing. She left you for a younger man, and you have been asked to resign. So you're going to be resigning from your post as police chief of this town 180 days from the start of the game, and basically it's kind of to tell the ending story of your career. So as I said, you've sort of been a good police officer for your entire career, but now you're going to be forced to make some choices. You have a friend who's in trouble with the wrong people. There are warring factions within the city, mafia versus gangs, that you need to kind of play off each other, and you need to make decisions that are critical in determining what kind of police officer you're going to be. Are you going to help the gangs out? Are you going to refuse to help the gangs? And your choices influence your history or what happens to you throughout the story. Overall, it's an interesting story, but it's very slow. It's a very slow uptick for the game, and that's one criticism I would have, is that it seems like it takes a really long time for anything to really get going. You kind of get this little intro scene, and that it gives you some useful information about your character, kind of about the politics going on, but then it seems like for the first 7 to 10 days, you're really they give you too long to figure out the mechanics before the narrative really gets going, in my opinion. Now the game is made up of multiple different phases. As I've said, there is both a real-time and a turn-based element. Intermixed between those, there's also an element of sort of story, and that's what you see in the video right at this moment. Is there's this scene where your character is meeting with Sand, who's kind of the mafioso, the head of the local mafia in your city, and he's asking for your support to fight a gang leader named Vargas, who's challenging his authority in the city. So again, you're being drawn into this conflict going on, and this is around day 13 of the game. So it's this doesn't necessarily mean it's the only thing that's going on in the game, the whole story of the game, but that's where you're at kind of early on. It's sort of the big first thing that happens in the game, and as I said, it happens 13 turns into the game. It feels like it gives you too much time to learn the mechanics. The game bills itself as a sort of tree or decision based game. So during these conversations and meetings, you'll get choices on, what you want to do, what decisions you want to make, and those, at least theoretically, influence the direction that the game goes and the future that you have as an officer as well. Um, Now, the real core of the game. So there's the narrative aspect, which is kind of like a wrapper around the real core, but the real core of the game is this sort of turn-based real-time game. Every single day I would consider a turn or a day. Every single day is a turn. And you are in charge of deciding what you're going to do with the police force. So, as you can see here, there are certain things that come up day to day that you have to deal with. You will receive sort of political requests from City Hall to accomplish certain objectives, be them protect a police officer so he can receive an award, or, hire more female police officers, or fire all black police officers. Those kinds of things are political requirements that are put up upon you. But in addition to that, once you go into your daily turn, you have a real-time clock that moves. You can see it on the top of the screen throughout the day. And as the day goes by, different events will come up. So as you see in this case, a massive fight is erupted. and it's up to you to determine who are you going to dispatch to that fight in order to deal with it. So in this case, you can see I've decided I'm going to deploy SWAT to this massive fight, as well as 4 police officers that I've selected out of my roster. And then once you select that, you dispatch the forces, and you can see them kind of move along this map, along this little red line in between all the different buildings until they get to their objective. But you're not limited to one event, so it's a strategy game in that you have to husband your resources. You have to make tactical decisions. There's a big fight going on. Do we send reinforcements? What we originally sent appears to be inadequate, so do we want to send more police officers? If we do send more police officers, what if another crime? You can see there now an assault just cropped up. So we sent additional police officers. That means we only have 2. In this case, we can send them to deal with this assault, but it's possible a third crime could erupt. And you may need to make decisions about who you send where. In addition to that, so the gang element also plays a role. So from time to time, different members of factions who are vying for your support will ask for you to help. Maybe they want you to help intimidate someone so that they can be, roughed up. Maybe you are being asked to just kind of conduct basic, marksmanship type stuff. So there's one where they're asking you to send people to participate in a marksmanship contest. And in addition to that, so sometimes, when your force arrives at the particular crime, sometimes it auto-resolves and tells you what happens. Sometimes you're forced to make these decisions on how your officers are going to respond, as you can see on the screen here. So the dog lets the boy escape and the owner starts to flee. What do? Do you borrow a girl's bicycle? Do you run after him? I had one where there was a guy threatening to stab himself in a bathroom stall, and it asked what I wanted to do, and I chose the option to, tell me more about your problem. I thought, well, maybe we can talk him down, but I made the mistake of only sending one officer in all by himself, and the ending result was that my officer was stabbed to death. The guy must have freaked out or something and stabbed him to death. So that's something that can happen. In addition to that, if you wait for a crime or event to time out, then it goes undone, and that influences your performance. If it's a gang-related thing, it could hurt you in the story as well if you're not helping the people you promise to help. So it's an interesting sort of real-time game that has turns every single day. So again, it's happening all in real time. I think I could pause it, but there's no turn for each crime. So we kind of let these events play out, and these police officers move across the map till they get to their objective. And then once they do, you can see in this case, this robbery was auto-resolved, whereas the one before, I had to make a bunch of decisions. In addition to that, sometimes during the process of being a police force, you can capture things. So, we stumbled across some handguns here, non-automatic weapons. We can bring them to the police station as evidence and seize them, or we could maybe be a little more shady and have the mafia sell the guns and get a little bit of revenue from it. In which case, you're given the decision, do you want to share that with your staff, with your other officers, or do you want to just pocket it yourself? Additionally, there sometimes are false alarms, so you may dispatch police officers to deal with a crime, and then that crime may end up not really being a crime. Someone called the police when they didn't really need to. Additionally, there are things that require detective work, so we haven't shown you any detective work yet, but there are detectives. Those are the little kind of brownish colored figures there on the bottom of that personnel chart that I was showing you. But those require a little bit more time. So sometimes a crime will happen and you'll need to assign some detectives to it, and you'll slowly accumulate different clues that you have to use to try and help solve the crime. And you kind of have to storyboard out the crimes, and then you end up with some sort of, hopefully you end up identifying who the suspect is. You can also close cases. So if you run into a crime that you can't seem to figure out and you can't seem to solve, then you can close the case and reassign the detectives elsewhere. And then you can, if new evidence arrives, or you think of something different further down the line, you can reopen the case. And then once time ends, you end the turn. You kind of get a summary, and you move on to the next day. Every single day begins with this sort of newspaper scene where these newspapers are put on the desk. They don't really seem to have any impact or real indication of how you're doing or how the game is going. They're just there for flavor. In addition, you see your guy kind of start up his car and drive to work every morning. That's the exact same scene. And then from time to time, different police officers or detectives of yours will have reasons they don't want to go into work. And you kind of have to decide how you want to deal with that. That can be used as justification for firing your officers. If you tell them no, they have to come into work, but they don't, or officers don't show up. Obviously, if you let them take off when they ask, that can help with your morale. But on the flip side, that can have perhaps negative effects, where if you keep telling them they can take off, maybe they take advantage of that. I don't really understand the whole record deal thing. I think it just adds some ambiance to it. And then in addition, one other thing I wanted to call out, you do have two shifts. So you have a shift A and a shift B. So you have your police force is split into two groups, and they alternate days serving. So you have kind of half your police force works on one day, then they take the day off, then the other half works the next day. So there's a lot of factors that go into this. You can sell stolen drugs or not stolen, but seized drugs and weapons to try and get some more money. But at the end of the day, your objective is to retire comfortably. So you're 60 years old, you're being forced out politically, but you have 180 days left that you're serving, and all of these decisions serve to influence where your future is going as a police officer, or not a police officer so much as a retiree. So there's a lot of temptation, if you're trying to get to $500,000 and retire in style, there's a lot of temptation sometimes to, in this case, you can see on the screen here, Christopher Sand, he's the head of the mafia, he wants us to send some police officers to go help him out. So there's a lot of temptation to do things like that. That may not be directly policing the city, and in some cases are making the city more dangerous. But again, you're being forced to resign within 180 days. You don't have a pension. You have no real money. So you've kind of got to figure it out. Like, am I just going to keep being the good police officer that I've been for 30 plus years? And here's an example of a investigation for a crime, by the way. Or am I going to, say, screw it, I'll try and do the best I can and maybe make a little bit of money just through my normal salary and bonuses and being successful in order to retire with style. So it's kind of, it puts you in a tricky position. In addition to that, an old friend of yours has some legal trouble or trouble with the wrong people. So you kind of got to figure where your priorities lie. And you can end up being in a very bad place at the end of the game, or you can end up being, in a very good place. But it also could affect your legacy. Right now, when the game starts, you're remembered for being, a very by the board, good police officer. He arrests the criminals type deal in a city that is portrayed as being incredibly corrupt. So that's kind of the high level overview of what This Is the Police is from a game standpoint. It's interesting. If the game, I haven't gone through a full 180 days. If the game really goes 180 days, it could probably get very tedious unless there's a whole bunch of different stories that come up. But it seems like the game is really taking its time. I've played a little bit beyond this, but this isn't a full review or anything. This is more of an impressions type deal. I find the game interesting, but I also find the game very slow. You really don't get into any of the kind of mafioso type warring or fighting or anything like that until 2 weeks into the game. There's a little bit of backstory, a little bit of, in between turns, by the way. So you play through the day and you kind of make your decisions. But then there's also storylines that'll pop up in between turns. So from time to time, you'll have those decisions you have to make where you go and meet certain mafia people, or you go and do something, an event triggers. So there are things like that we kind of showed one at the beginning of the game that will influence the game and go forward, and you have to make decisions. But the core of the game is this turn-based deal and how that influences your narrative. And to me, it just seems like it takes too long to get going. And then there's not enough variety in the game. I mean, I could be wrong here, but it just seems like 2 weeks into the game and things start feeling a little bit tedious, a little bit long. There's nothing wrong with a long game. There's nothing wrong with a detailed game. Hell, I'm in the midst of a War in the Pacific game. But it's got to have variety. It's got to have complexity. And I don't feel like the story is involving me enough in what's going on. I don't think there's enough events, and I think things are a little bit too slow to get going. It shouldn't take me an hour and a half of playtime before I really get into the core of what's going on, what the narrative is, and figure out what the heck is the story here. It's not even a matter of, taking too long to learn. It's simple. It's easy to pick up. It's just a matter of it's too slow getting you into the story, in my opinion. With that being said, I'm going to keep playing through it. But that's one of the things that prevented me from live streaming. And I was thinking about, hey, I'll do a live stream tonight. I'll play through this game. And yesterday, when I ended up playing for about 3 hours, and I played 3+ hours today as well, I just realized this is not the kind of game that I can voice over effectively, because it's just, frankly, it's not. It's very slow pace, and that's interesting, especially you're going the police route, you're going the detective route. That may be appropriate for the topic and the game itself and the style. I appreciate the game. I think I highly recommend it if this is a kind of genre that you're interested in, but with the caveat that you need to understand it's not a quick game, and it's a very slow-paced game, and it's a somewhat repetitive game as well. So just keep those things in mind. There's a bit of enjoyment here. It's an interesting game. It's well put together. But again, it's got to be the type of game you're okay with taking a while for things to get going. Not from it's complicated and you can see things unfolding, but just take a while to really, feel like anything's happening. And then understanding that, the day-to-day turns can really become a grind. And that may be the strategy for the game, too, Being a police officer, I would imagine, especially a police chief, things I'm sure would feel like a grind and feel like, it must be difficult to imagine that you're making progress when the same kind of crimes keep happening day after day after day. And that's certainly a feeling this game captures. I know I've been a little bit critical of the game. I'm not trying to be. I actually enjoy it quite a bit myself, but I do believe this is the kind of game that it's got to hit the right person. If that's not you, it will bounce off you, and you'll be frustrated. With that being said, it's a pretty good price at around $14, I believe, right now. So if this looks interesting to you, feel free to pick it up. If not, let me know what you guys think of the video. Feel free to comment in the description. Let me know if you want to see more of these videos. I don't think a live stream would serve it all that well. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think. Thanks again, guys. I guess this is probably a little bit more of a review, or a little bit more in depth than I usually go. One other piece is I will say I really like the art. The artwork in this game is very well done, and it's very well put together, and I really appreciate that. But I think that's all I have to say about the game right now. So far, I'm enjoying it. It's fun, but it's also slow. So again, let me know your guys' thoughts, and until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.